is that the Board of Education can request of the Board of Finance in each town that up to 2% of the budgeted appropriation that the Board of Ed had for what would be 2019, 2020 year end, the one that just ended, can be put aside to be able to have for the new budget year. Essentially, in accounting parlance, that's an appropriation in force. Doug, it's not an encumbrance, whatever that number is going to work out to be. Okay. But in any event, the conditions on such a transfer are such: the deposited amount does not exceed 2% of total budgeted appropriation for education. Each expenditure from such account shall be made only for education, and each such expenditure shall be authorized by the local Board of Ed for the town. After getting this on July 12th, I sent an email to Sherry with a copy to Kurt and Doug and Mike Wilson, the superintendent, Ed Stramello, the Board of Ed chair, and Kristen Harmeling, who I guess is on their finance committee. And I asked 4 things: the estimate of what the total dollars are that represent 2%. Does the 2% carryover represent the total unexpended money? In other words, 2% of their budget in rough terms is probably somewhere around $620,000. So I asked them, how much is their estimate of the 2%? Does the 2% represent the total of what they're underspent for the whole budget? How much is they're estimating that won't be spent out of the budget? And what expenses are they earmarking to pay for? Essentially, the bottom line and the mechanics of this will be the town is what the town, well, the Board of Ed, as Doug had mentioned, is projecting a window of essentially anywhere from 441,000 to 290,000 as, let's call it, unspent money. That being said, whatever, the first thing we have to consider is the overall deficit that the town may find itself in after all the numbers are accumulated for the past fiscal year. Any amount that the Board of Ed has that, you know, represents their underspending would first go to cover the projected deficit of the town. So in other words, depending upon what that 2% is, the deficit comes first ahead of the Board of Ed carrying over money. And that's the condition, let's say. So if we had a $90,000 deficit, I'm just making up numbers now because we don't have final figures. So if we had a $90,000 deficit and the Board of Education came in at a $300,000 unspent money, well, 90,000 would drop to the bottom line of the general fund, and the Board of Ed reserve would be 210,000. So whatever the Board of Ed money is matched against the town's projected deficit, then whatever would be left would be considered for the 2% carryover money. And I don't really have a problem with that. We can talk about it now. I do expect that I'm going to get my email answered, but irrespective, that will mean that those are just extra expenditures that we don't have to worry about in the upcoming year. I mean, and if the Board of Ed, and were the Board of Ed money unspent to be less than the projected town deficit, then there'd be no 2% reserve that they would get. Any questions at all about this? I'm assuming that it might be to take action on this next month if the town numbers and the Board of Ed numbers are ready. If not, it would get pushed down into September.
I have a question. So what would it essentially be like if their surplus ended up not going into this account and being put into our general fund?
What would it be? What would it be like?
Like, is that an option?
I don't think, and again, this just comes back to my own thoughts. I don't think that's necessarily a good option, simply because we don't know, and we haven't accumulated the final hit that this town has taken in all areas, not just Board of Ed, in all areas because of COVID. And I think it might be an exercise of, yeah, we take it all, we don't give them a reserve, and then for whatever projects or issues come up, that we have to go back and pull money out of surplus to affect whatever needs to be done. And for all purposes, there's no effect on the mill rate. There's no effect on the 2021 budget because of this. As I said, the technical accounting jargon for this is called an appropriation in force. All that means is it was appropriated in year one and there's money left. It was unspent, so it goes over to year two.
And we could subtract that from their budget in year two, correct?
No, they have their budget now that we've approved. So it's not a case of we're giving you this, so we're taking it off now. Only because you're probably going to be in the same situation. With the problem being the COVID impact still hasn't really been assessed. And I think that this is probably the cleanest way to do it in terms of covering whatever board expenses are needed or projects. And the budget now for 2021 has been passed, and we are not going to go back and, let's say, amend their budget to lower it by whatever their number would be. And I can't conceive that it's going to be a material number. I mean, 2% is, by my guess, a seat of the pants calculation would be about $620,000. And as we've heard from Doug tonight, it's not going to be close to that. So it's really not worth the administrative hassle of going to a budget referendum when the net sum would come back to be the same thing anyway.
Okay. All right.
And
thank
no, you're welcome. I think we're all feeling our way through this COVID issue, whether it's Board of Ed or the town in general. And we still, Doug, do you have any feel for town reimbursements yet on this?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we've been tracking what we spent, and we've spent less than 100,000. So,
Okay.
There's that.
All right. I mean, because I think when you're in the area of, and I'm just guessing again without knowing any hard and fast plans, but I'm guessing there has to be some engineering and architecture work, not necessarily big level, but partitions and spacing and maybe walls and who knows what into the school system to accomplish if there's going to be an opening. All of it takes money, and we all know from the budget we got passed, I don't recall seeing anything like this in there. So, it's a fact that this COVID thing has cost us money, and we're doing our best to try to minimize having to go into the well, meaning our fund balance, to take care of what's needed.
Bill, this is Jim. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If they end up getting money for the amount, whatever's left over, say the town gets their money and, they have excess, is that to be put in like a special account and they have to keep track of that and show where their money's spent?
They have to keep, if they get their 2%, whatever that number is going to be, they have to separately track it. They can't just my understanding of the ordinance from the state is they have to separately track it. They just can't lump it so that, it just
Mhm.
becomes mixed, homogenized into their current year budget. And any amount of money that would be coming back for COVID to the town, my sense is would be made, the payment would be to the town of Seymour. But I can't say for certain that there wouldn't be a reimbursement separate to the Board of Ed, but that's all, I guess, still to be decided, to be honest with you.
So this state statute says it's to be used for education. So even if they use it for walls or whatever,
Well, that's
supply.
part of the deal. If you're talking COVID and trying to fix it, I mean, that's all education related expenses in the schools.
So that's what they're trying to do, try to get a little bit of money to help combat that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think not only this town, but probably every town in the state is looking that, okay, if they can salvage any money up to 2% of their budget. Now, this town, by the time we're done with our numbers and our audit, their unspent money, let's say, it's not going to be close to 2%. And the fact,
Typically the Board of Ed spends all the money, right?
yeah, I mean, in most cases in every city, I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the way things go. But
Right.
typically, they're going to have, like I said, whatever their unspent money works out to be. I don't anticipate it coming up to the 2% level, not based on what I know and what the finance director has told us. So that being the case, they have X dollars. But as I said, if the town ends up with, let's say Doug used the number of maybe a $90,000 shortfall. Well, whatever the number out of the Board of Ed is, minus whatever we need in total to cover the town deficit, would be that set aside, let's call it. And right now we
So
don't have enough info what it is.
So that's part of the state statute. The town gets money first before the.
Well, it's
Board
not
gets that.
specific, but the statute is that may deposit into, if a Board of Finance decides that it's going to do this, it may deposit the money into up to 2% into a non-lapsing account. So
Right.
Our board has the discretion to make the determination of whatever this 2% final number is going to work to.
Mhm.
And as I said, if we come out with a 90 grand shortfall, the Board of Ed's got a $300,000 surplus. Well, we'll take 90 and they can keep 210 or whatever the numbers work out to be. But it's still
Right.
too early it's still too early in the game to know that yet, unfortunately.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else on this? All right. Well, correspondence is just what I laid out, the letter from the Board of Ed to me on this ordinance. Anybody have anything else they'd like to bring before the meeting? If not, item number 12 on the list.
Make a motion to adjourn.
How did I know? Second, please.
I'll second it. Jim Cretella.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Everybody, thanks for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Good night.
All right.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.